We are all destined to die. We just don't know when. Unfortunately, some of us will have to face down some pretty gnarly horrors at some point, often bringing us to the end a little earlier than expected. And for plenty of characters in horror movies, that's the reality. So let's talk about the top 5 horror characters who couldn't escape their fate, part 2. Coming in at number 5, we've got Ginger from Ginger Snaps. Poor Ginger. She just wanted to grow up and have a little fun, and honestly, poor Bridget too. She just wanted to hang out with her older sister, but the local werewolf had other plans for this duo. Or I guess total lack of plans, because, you know, it attacked 2 random girls just strolling through the woods at night. But hey, in a movie literally called Ginger Snaps, you have to expect that the character named Ginger is gonna go through some shit. So we kick off with 2 extremely morbid teen siblings who have essentially made a death pact if they can't escape their boring suburb by a certain age. Things change quick though, especially when puberty hits hard. And when puberty powers up thanks to a lycanthropic infection, things get weird and sad. Ginger gets mauled by a werewolf that ends up being hit by a car and therefore has to go through her transformation without any guidance whatsoever. At first, she doesn't even know that she's becoming a werewolf. Of course, the hunger for human flesh and the biological urges that arise during puberty kind of stand in for each other as more and more folks get tangled in this werewolfy conundrum. Ginger flies off the handle and tries to live life solo, making decisions her little sister finds abhorrent. And of course, Bridget doesn't understand what's going on at all. If only they communicated like rational humans instead of hormonal teens. Ah, the irony. After a few back of the van encounters, the killing of some high school staff, and a gnarly party, it does seem as though there might be some reconciliation between sisters. Unfortunately, Ginger's bloodlust takes over entirely, making killing more important than chilling. Dang. Werewolves aren't totally invulnerable though, and Ginger eventually does snap. She decides not to take the cure that her pals developed and instead goes about attacking folks. After a final violent spree, she attacks Bridget, who was holding a knife, and she impales herself on the weapon, succumbing to her injuries, and she perishes as a wolf. Her fate was indeed to be a werewolf, and she couldn't control her hunger, thus ending her own life and traumatizing her one true friend, her sister. Heavy stuff. Coming in at number 4, we've got Amelia from The Babadook. This is a very peculiar case, especially considering the fact that both Amelia and her son Sam survive. Too bad her husband didn't. Heyo! Interestingly enough, this off-screen pre-movie death seals her fate from the start. There is no way for her to avoid anything that happens here because she's experienced a great tragedy that leaves her at a financial, parental, and emotional disadvantage moving forward. R.I.P. Oscar, you are definitely missed. So after this horrible accident took away her husband and the father of her child, Amelia was left to raise Sam on her own. Sam was a peculiar child to start with and tended to be quite difficult to deal with. And things got even worse when the mother-son duo were introduced to the Babadook, a tall, shadowy man in a top hat who constantly tortures whoever learns about him. That can't be too helpful. So now Amelia has to deal with Sam's eccentricities on her own, fight off her own personal demons, and protect herself and her son from this terrifying monster. It doesn't sound like a good time, I'll be totally honest. And after a veritable gauntlet of horrible ordeals, Amelia and Sam figure out what to do with the Babadook. They can't kill it, and they can't get rid of it, so they instead lock it in the basement. To prevent it from getting too surly and trying to escape, they feed it earthworms that they collect in a bowl. Yum yum. But now they have a responsibility to keep this thing at bay. Amelia is now the Babadook's ward, and if she fails to remain proactive in her attempts to satiate it, it will likely begin its awful practices anew. I'm sure you all know about the popular interpretation of the monster as a manifestation of grief, which ties Amelia's fate to the loss of her husband. A person can't escape the guilt and sense of loss after the death of a loved one, and in this case, it sticks around in the form of a monster. She survives, but her life is forever altered, and the Babadook is not going away anytime soon. Coming in at number 3, we've got David Kessler from An American Werewolf in London. Another werewolf. Man, these folks are bad at escaping their fate, eh? The thing is, unlike Ginger, David had many opportunities to escape his fate. He just never decides to do a single smart thing. Different strokes, I suppose. So let's count down the ways David Kessler could have possibly avoided his death at the hands of a bunch of British cops with guns. Let's do it. First, maybe plan your backpacking trip a little bit better. If you're lost in the middle of nowhere, you have a higher likelihood of dying. Just basic life skills there. Next up, maybe chill out a little when entering the local pub, especially if it seems a little rough around the edges. Then you won't get kicked out by the locals and have to trek in the rain. And hey, if somebody tells you to stay off the moors, stay off the moors. Stick to the road. But that would be too easy, and apparently David likes to tempt fate, and good lord does he never stop with the dumb choices. So after a bunch of horrible nightmares featuring weird creatures killing everyone, he wakes up and sees a vision of his horribly mauled dead friend. Does he listen to Jack's advice though? No. He continues flouting his friend's good-intentioned advice right up until the bitter end. Even after transforming in the most painful way possible, he continues to live his life as a normal, non-deadly human. He even runs into all of the folks he killed at a porno theater and decides to ignore their pleas too. Come on, David, you're a werewolf. Release these folks from their bondage and save your soul from any additional torment. But of course he decides not to do that and ends up rampaging through Piccadilly Circus and gets gunned down big time. There's no escaping that. Coming in at number 2, we've got Audrey and Henry from Anything for Jackson. Here is another grief-ridden tale of love and loss, released very recently too, so if you want to see it, spoilers! Elderly couple Audrey and Henry love their little grandson Jackson, but one fateful day Jackson died in an accident. His mother survived but couldn't deal with the guilt and ended her own life. This left Audrey and Henry in a state of total disarray. But soon they discovered that it was possible to bring Jackson back. And if they could bring him back, everything would be okay again, right? So what if resurrecting a 4-year-old means selling your souls to Satan and inadvertently killing everyone you come into contact with? You know, it seems like a pretty good deal to me. Henry is an obstetrician and manages to find a single young pregnant patient who is both planning to keep her child and to raise it on her own. Naturally, the older couple kidnap her and tie her to a bed so they can perform rituals that will transfer Jackson's soul into the unborn baby's body. This requires sacrifices and lots of secrecy. Both of these end up in bloodshed, whether it's the local snow shoveler or a detective who sniffed out their wrongdoings. But it's all worth it, right? As long as Jackson is back in their arms, they can flee the country and live their lives once again. Unfortunately, Audrey and Henry didn't see all of these satanic side effects coming. Ghosts and ghouls roam their home and dangers multiply. Amidst the chaos, it becomes very clear that nobody is going to make it out alive. Henry, cursed to his fate because he loves his wife and will do anything to make her happy again. Audrey, grief-stricken and drowning in guilt, can't live if she thinks her grandson is really gone. And the mother, Shannon? Well, this is a pretty new movie, so I'll let you figure that one out for yourself. And coming in at number 1, we've got Jess from Black Christmas, 1974. Ay. The first kill has to be memorable, right? And this one never stops looming over the movie. After Claire gets suffocated and locked in the attic, nobody manages to find her body. Not even when it's literally staring out the window with dead eyes covered in plastic. How are the police not gonna check in the attic after all that? Billy got lucky as hell when they all just assumed Peter was behind everything, leaving Jess in a very vulnerable position. See, as members of the audience, we know that Billy is a madman who has somehow made it into the house and has been picking off the residents one by one. But because Peter is a tortured soul with a history of destroying pianos, the police somehow figure it's been him all along. They find him beside Jess's unconscious body and decide, yep, that takes care of that. Leaving a police officer behind to watch over the house was a nice gesture, but poor Jess is unmonitored in her room. After an entire movie's worth of being harassed over the phone, watching her friends die, and getting chased by her boyfriend after not wanting to keep her baby, she's now asleep and alone. But Billy is still up there in the attic, undisturbed. So after answering that first obscene phone call, Jess's fate was sealed. Even though everyone can assume the house is safe and sound now, the killer remains. It's left ambiguous at the end of the movie, but we all know Billy's MO. Poor folks, eh? If only they hadn't tempted fate in one way or the other. Maybe they could have lived out uninteresting, safe lives. But that is not how things work in horror movies. So, what'd you think of the list? How many of these did you see coming? What's another movie where some characters are doomed from the start? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more gratuitous ones from the top 5 horror characters who couldn't escape their fate. Kazuma-kun says, if you have the choice of decapitation or burning, yeah, go with decapitation. All you feel is a sore neck. When burning, everything hurts. I like that you foresee folks getting to choose their gruesome death. And yeah, I think decapitation sounds good today. Copy says, I feel the characters from Final Destination can never escape death's plan. I agree. It's Fisty says, cannibalism is the only ethical consumption under capitalism. I mean, they rhyme, so it has to make sense. Hold up, you think cannibalism is ethical? Ethical cannibalism, kinda has a ring to it. Lauren Bolding says Hereditary was epic up to the ending, let down worse than Scarlett Johansson's performance in Lucy. Okay, I've been seeing a lot of people saying this lately. I don't get it. The ending to Hereditary makes sense to me. I think it's a good ending. What don't people like about it? And that's all the time we have for today. I'm going to float my way up to the top of a backyard treehouse. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.